In the previous sessions, when we discussed the history of Christianity and the message of Jesus and what happened after him, we mentioned that his community, which is the Israelites, and he's one of them, they deviated and shifted away from his pure teachings that was based on monotheism, on Tawheed. And you can follow that in the Holy Quran in different chapters. In chapter 2, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses them in Surah Al-Baqarah, ثُمَّ قَسَتْ قُلُوبُكُم مِّن بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ أَوْ أَشَدُّ قَسْوَةً. Allah says, because of this chain of violations that you committed against your prophets and your religion and your God, your hearts became hardened. Qasat, qaswa, the harshness and the hardness of the heart. فَهِيَ كَالْحِجَارَةِ. God says your heart, which is supposed to be tender and compassionate and merciful and beautiful, it became like a rock, even worse than a rock. They swayed from the Akhirah. The main disease of Bani Israel at that time was that they put their focus on the dunya and they completely forgot about the Akhirah. They completely forgot about the purpose of their creation and their existence here on this lower life. And they shifted towards dunya and the temptations of the dunya and the deception of the dunya. Therefore, when Isa came after Musa, almost 1500 years after Musa, when he came, he did not focus on the Sharia. He did not bring up any new law. He did not introduce any new legislation in their Sharia. All what he focused upon was akhlaq and manners. Akhlaq and manners. How to go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How to lessen your concentration and your focus on this lower life, cheap life, transitory life, and aim for the real one, which is the Akhirah. Therefore, his Bible, most of his true Bible, the real Bible, focuses on akhlaq and mannerism. Is the prophet of akhlaq. And of course, some people were happy with him, they embraced him, they accepted him, they followed him. The Quran says, and again it's in the Quran, that many they rejected him. And those who were in the front, in the beginning, in the elite who stood against him, in the forefront were the rabbis. Ahbar, اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم. Habr, we also use it in the Arabic term. It's a Hebrew term and Arabic term. Habr, the one who's well versed in knowledge. Habrun, Ibn Abbas, alayhi salam, Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anh, the cousin of the Prophet, is called Habrul Ummah. Habr is someone who's deeply and well versed in knowledge. So their scholars, their ulama, and their monks, their rabbis, they stood in the forefront of the opposition to Isa alayhi salam. And then they went to the Roman emperor of the time and they said to him, listen, this man is very dangerous. This man is rebellious. This man is posing a threat to your kingdom, to your rule, to your monarchy. So it's better that you get rid of him. And they persuaded the Roman Empire with his army, with his soldiers, to chase Isa alayhi salam. And then they believed that Isa went into a house and they captured him and then they crucified him, where the Quran has a different story. The Quran says, وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. شُبِّهَ لَهُمْ. They were misled. They thought they captured someone who was from the Roman army. Actually, the one who led the Roman army to him, to his whereabout, that person, Allah made him to resemble Jesus for a few minutes. Have you seen some of the new movies now? What they do? How they turn a man into a tiger within a few seconds? It's not difficult for Allah. A producer at Hollywood is not more intelligent than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For a few seconds, that man who was the enemy of Jesus, few seconds he started resembling him, so they captured him. And he started yelling, and I am not Jesus, I am one of his enemies, I am the one who brought you here. They said, you are a liar. They crucified him. And Isa, Allah lifted him up to him. بَلْ رَفَعَهُ اللَّهُ إِلَيْهِ. Allah took him up. Isa will die, but not now. Quran says, at his time will come, he will be back again. He will guide his followers to the right path, and then his term would come to conclusion like any other messenger or apostle or a prophet. His message after him faced many challenges. There was a dichotomy after Jesus. And this is exactly what happened in Islam after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is exactly what happened in Judaism after Musa alayhi salam. The Prophet has a very amazing hadith. لَتَتَّبِعُنَّ سُنَنَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. You would follow exactly, step by step, the tradition, the story, the saga of those who lived before you, meaning Bani Israel. Or you Muslims, you're going to do exactly the same. What they did to their prophets, you're going to do to your own prophet. So there was this dichotomy. Hawariyun, the most trusted disciples who were 12, they remained steadfast on the path of monotheism and the teachings of Isa alayhi salam, while others, they shifted away because of the dunya, because of the temptation. Dunya is very powerful, my friends, very powerful. Hubbud dunya, the attachment to dunya, to be a ruler, to be a governor, to be the master, to be rich, to be famous, very powerful. Very few people can resist that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala awha li Dawood. He said to David, Ya Dawood, akhiru ma yakhruju min qalbi al-mu'mini hubbud dunya. He's speaking about the believers. Here, Allah is not speaking about the hypocrites, the corrupts, about the pure, the nice, the good believers. He says those good believers, when you look at them, the last thing is going to get extracted out of their hearts is the attachment to the dunya. Those are believers, good believers. Those are the nice guys, but still very hard for them to be detached from this dunya. آخر ما يخرج من قلب المؤمن حب الدنيا. So there was this battle between these two groups, the disciples on the one hand, and those reformers. They call them in the history of Christianity, they call them reformers. One of those major reformers is Saint Paul. Saint Paul is the most important figure in the history of Christianity, yesterday and today. And as I mentioned last week, if you analyze Christianity, Christian theology and ideology, you would find that the founding father of the contemporary Christianity today, which is practiced in the church worldwide, whether it's in Catholicism or Protestant, is Saint Paul. This man was born in the city of Tartus on the Mediterranean, and he was educated in Jerusalem. And he was the fierce enemy of Jesus and his followers. And his habit was, he made a vow to chase them anywhere and everywhere. He went after them, persecuting them and killing them and torturing them. Until he says, one day, he was going from Damascus to Jerusalem. On that journey, God appeared to him. And God, in this case, is Jesus. And this is mentioned in their holiest books, in this Bible. If you look at the New Testament, after the 4 Gospels comes the book of Acts by the apostles. And the first apostle is Saint Paul. His ancient name at that time was Saul. Then they changed it into Paul. So he's Saint Paul. He says, and this is, I quote from the Old Testament, the Holy Bible. It says, look at the shift, how he changed from the fierce enemy of Jesus and Christianity into man number one in Christianity today. He reminds me of the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab. They have similarities, and I will come to that. If you wait, I would show you the similarities between these two men. It says here in the book of Acts, chapter 9, and Saul yet breathing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of Jesus, of the Lord, disciples of the Lord, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, any people who follows Jesus or the disciples, any of this way, whether they were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. He would capture them and bring them to Jerusalem. What happened to him later on? Very interesting. And as he journeyed, meaning journeyed from Damascus to Jerusalem, as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined around about him a light from heaven. On his journey, he saw this light from heaven. Who was that? And he fell to the earth and heard the voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, this is God, huh? Saul, Saul, why persecuting thou me? And he said, who art thou? The Lord. Are you Lord? He is asking, are you the Lord? The answer came, and the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutes. It is hard for thee to kick against the bricks. So you are getting nowhere. Don't waste your time. You cannot destroy my faith and my religion. Jesus is telling him. So here, this shift 180 degrees, not 179 degrees, huh? Imagine someone pure pagan, antichrist, killing them, chasing them, persecuting their men and women, immediately becomes a prophet of Christianity. Immediately becomes the first defender of Christianity in this universe after Jesus, without any transition. This is Federal Express overnight. This is FedEx overnight. He did not go through 3 weeks, 5 weeks of transition, 3 months. No. Overnight happened to him. And he, trembling and astonished, said, this is Saul, Lord, what will thou have me to do? What do you want me to do? And the Lord said to him, unto him, arise and go into the city, meaning Jerusalem, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. When you go to Jerusalem, they would tell you. Someone would tell you what you must do. And hence, Saint Paul becomes the greatest man in the history of Christianity. And of course, his letters, which is found here in this book, the Acts, called the Acts of the Apostles, are the most important heritage of Christianity after the 4 Gospels today. The most important source in Christianity, the most holy source in Christianity after the 4 Gospels are the letters of Saint Paul. And then, of course, he started, his mission, and they believe that he died after 30 years after Jesus, which is around year 60 AD after Jesus. Saul concluded his mission, and he died. But at the end, he was victorious. We were, on the one hand, we had Jesus and his disciples and his mission. On the other hand, we had this new apostle called Paul and his mission and his followers. At the end, the second one, Saint Paul, became victorious, and he defeated Christianity and he knocked Jesus down. And today's Christianity wholly is based on the teachings, and they call it reforms, islahat, reforms of Saint Paul. فآمنت طائفة من بني إسرائيل وكفرت طائفة. What does that remind you of? We had the same in Islam. Who is the majority and who is the minority today? I want to pause for a second here. When I said Saint Paul resembles Umar ibn al-Khattab, I am right. And for further investigation and scientific, in-depth analysis, I invite you to read this book. Very simple. I wrote this book about 15 years ago. Go to pages where I say the inventions of Umar ibn al-Khattab into Islam, into this religion, what he did after his Khilafah. I mention it here, page 109. And according to Sunni sources, they say, Umar ibn al-Khattab said, if I find an answer in the book of God, I will get it. If not, in the Sunnah of the Prophet, although he contradicts himself. At the time of the death of the Prophet, he said, we don't need the Sunnah. Hasbuna kitabullah. The book of God suffices us. We don't need what Muhammad is telling us. We don't need to listen to him. Hasbuna kitabullah. Recorded, nobody can erase that. Nobody can delete that. Recorded many, many times in the holiest sources of hadith and Sunnism. Bukhari and Muslim. Hasbuna kitabullah. All what we need is the book of God. We don't need the Sunnah of the Prophet. He says that, he said to Shuraih al-Qadi when he appointed him as a judge in Medina, he said, Shuraih, if you find the answer in book of God, good. If not, the Sunnah of the Prophet. But if you don't find it, and this is the Sunni source, I'm quoting from a Sunni books. But if you do not find it in the tradition of the Prophet, then make up a verdict yourself. You come up with a verdict yourself. You don't have to find a source for it, a reference for it in the Kitab or the Sunnah of the Prophet. Depend on your analogy. Depend on your brain. Al-Tabari says that, this is what the Tabari says, that people during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, they preferred not to take their disputes to Umar. Not when they had conflict, they would not go to him for judgment, because he was known for judging by his personal belief, by his personal taste and personal belief, rather than the Islamic criteria. What did he invent? He invented many things. You come to the adhan. The adhan was, two things were introduced into, one of them was added to adhan, the other thing was deleted. As-salatu khayrun min al-nawm was added to the adhan, adhanul fajr. Hayya ala khayr al-amal was deleted, but during the time of the third caliph. The salat of the mayyit, on the deceased, Salla Rasulullah. This, all the transmitters of hadith, historians, they say the Prophet did khamsu takbirat. When he stood to pray over a dead body, he will do 5 times takbirat. Umar cut them short to 4. The talaq, which is in the Quran, at-talaqu marratan, very explicit. Very explicit. Wadih, bayyin. It is not complicated. Quran says if someone wants to divorce, he has the right to divorce his wife 3 times in 3 different sessions. At-talaqu marratan. الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان فإن طلقها, the 3rd time. So it has to be in 3 different sessions. Umar, he said during his time there was a surge in divorce, like today's California, 60%, 70%. So he made it easy for people. He said you can divorce your wife 3 times in 1 session. Why do you wait for the 2nd session and the 3rd one? In 3, get rid of her. Send her to her family in 1 session. Say to her, طالق, طالق, طالق. And sometimes you can shorten the sentence. Don't say طالق, طالق. It takes 5 seconds. You can make it in 2 seconds. Say you are طالق thrice بالثلاث. That's it. 2 seconds and she goes back to her family. Quran says no, this is not good. This is going to destroy the family. This is going to scatter your children and your family. You have to think about it. She cannot come back to you. If you divorce her 3 times, she cannot come back to you until she goes and she meets someone else and marry him and sleeps with him and then if that guy decided to divorce her, then she can come back to you. And here it's in a very evident opposition to the Quran. The same thing, Umar ibn al-Khattab, one of his ideas, many thousands, not one or two, I am just choosing some samples of them, is that when you are najis, you don't pray if you are najis, if you are impure on the state of janaba. While the Quran says, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً, one day he was sitting as Khalifa, a person comes to him, he says, أَجْنَبْتُ وَلَمْ أَجِدْ مَاءً. I am junub, I don't have water to take a shower. What should I do? He said, لَا تُصَلِّي, don't pray. One of the companions of the Prophet, he was sitting next to him. He said, Ya Umar, don't you remember we were in one of these military excursions and we woke up in the morning, both of us are junub. You said, I'm not going to pray. I said, I'm going to do tayammum, and I did tayammum, and we both went to the Prophet and we told our story to the Prophet, and the Prophet said, you are right, you did tayammum. You have to do tayammum. It's in the Quran. فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا, chapter 4, Surah An-Nisa, فَإِن لَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. And he says to the guy, don't pray. And many of these injunctions that either he introduced as a bid'ah, one of them Salatul Taraweeh. Millions of Muslims, believe me, even those who don't do Fajr and Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha, in Ramadan they have to do Taraweeh. Taraweeh is very important in Islam. More important than fasting. They have to be there in the masjid at Taraweeh time. It was introduced by Umar ibn al-Khattab, never by the Prophet. The Prophet ﷺ used to do nawafil in his private quarter, not in the masjid. And he encouraged the Muslimin. He said, for the congregational prayers, go to the masjid. But for the nawafil, do it in your privacy. This is a relationship between you and Lord. Private relationship. You have to meditate, reflect between you and Allah. And he did in the month of Ramadan, the nawafil in the evening of Ramadan in his house. One day he came to the masjid. He was about to begin the nawafil. Suddenly Muslims, they lined up there. The Prophet turned to them. He said, don't. This is not jama'ah. We don't do it in jama'ah. The second day, when he saw them waiting for him, he did not go to the masjid. He stayed at home, in his house, in his room, and he did the nawafil in his house. Umar came at his reign during his time, and he introduced the jama'ah into these nawafil, and today it is called Taraweeh. And many others. Either he abolished or he introduced. The temporary marriage was practiced during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, during the time of Abu Bakr, and part of the time of Umar. One day, he comes up with this idea. And when you tell the Muslim scholars about this, they say this, he was genius. He was genius. They give him credit. He was genius. Abu Bakr was not genius. Prophet Muhammad was not genius. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not genius. Allah is waiting for Umar ibn al-Khattab to come and bring introductions and innovations into religion. It's not about genius. I can tell you guys, Salat al-Jumu'ah 1 rak'ah, make it short because you have to go back to your offices. I can do that. This means I am a genius person. Deen, religion is not compared with our own reason. We have to stick to religion. We have to stick to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's a discipline to what He introduced to us. So this is some comparison, and inshallah you're going to hear more of these beautiful stories in the future, inshallah ta'ala. I promise you, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وسلمت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. وصل اللهم وسلم على خلفاء نبيك وأوصيائه وأهل بيته وأحبته علي أمير المؤمنين وقائد الغر المحجلين، وعلى البضعة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وسيدي شباب أهل الجنة الحسن والحسين عليهما السلام، وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل مخرجه وجعلنا من أنصاره وأعوانه. عباد الله، أوصيكم وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله ولزوم أمره. قال تعالى في كتابه الكريم: فلما جاءتهم رسلهم بالبينات فرحوا بما عندهم من العلم وحاق بهم ما كانوا به يستهزئون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Allah says, when their messengers and their prophets came to them with clear arguments, they exulted, the non-believers exulted in what they had with them of knowledge. They said, the knowledge that we have is sufficient for us, we are happy with it, and beset them that which they used to mock. وَحَاقَ بِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا بِهِ يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. My brothers and my sisters, one of the biggest diseases that plaguing the Muslim world today is sectarianism. Is this division along sectarian lines, which is escalating and deteriorating day by day as I speak. And the reason for this sectarianism, which brings with it violence and killing and suicide bombings and bloodshed. Almost every single day we hear a new tragedy happening in Pakistan against either the Hazara, the Afghani minorities, or the Shia of Pakistan, or Afghanistan, or Iraq, or Syria, or Lebanon, or this country and that country. This is the problem. The Christians, they have sectarianism. They are proud of their churches and their religious traditions, but they don't kill each other. They talk to each other. The Muslims, some of them, the majority of them, they kill each other. They don't tolerate each other. It's halal, the murdering of a Muslim, Shia Muslim, because he follows the tradition of Ahlul Bayt. He's Rafidi, he's rejecter. So it's halal to shed his blood. And the first person, the pioneer of this bloodshed and violence is Ahmad ibn Abd al-Halim ibn Taymiyyah, 700 years ago. He was the very first Nasibi, a hate monger of Ahlul Bayt, who had the guts to write a thesis, Jawazu Qital al-Rafida, 700 years ago in Damascus, permitting and encouraging to murder the Rafida, the rejectors, which is the Shia. And then came after him, remember, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab was not the pioneer. His master and his leader was Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah, 400 years before him. Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab came 300 years ago, which is 400 years after Ibn Taymiyyah in Najd, who followed the path of Ibn Taymiyyah, his master and his leader. There are two reasons for sectarianism. I will mention one today and I would leave the second for next week, inshallah. The first reason for it is jahl and ignorance. Ignorance. My friends, I can tell you with full confidence, that the vast majority of Muslims today worldwide, they are ignorant about their own Islamic tradition. It is true that they go to the mosques, to the Friday prayers, to the Jama'ah prayers, they fast, they go to Hajj, But I promise you, at any given time, in any given geographic area today in the Muslim world, if you put 500 Muslims in a room, lock the door, give them a sheet of paper with 10 questions about their religion. If you are Sunni, these are 10 questions about Sunnism. You are Shia, 10 questions about Shi'ism. Answer them. I would tell you that 99% of them are going to fail in this test. The Sunni does not know why he's Shia, and most of the Shias, they don't know why they are Shia. When they are put to test, to examination, scientific, not emotional. The reason why? Because they are Shias or Sunnis by inheritance, not by reason, not by investigation, not by exploration, by inheritance. He happened to be born in this family, the father, the mother are Sunnis, he becomes Sunni. He has no choice. And he would not give himself this liberty, this freedom to go and investigate one day. Okay, let me see why I am Sunni, why I am Shia, what is happening? Why I defend or I follow this without knowledge? So ignorance. Most of them, they don't read. I promise you, my friends, most of the Muslims, they have no time to read. They barely read the Quran during the month of Ramadan. And even when they read the Quran, I promise you, they don't understand the meaning of the Quran. They don't understand the meaning of the Quran. Robotic, even their prayers, Friday prayer, robotic. Mechanical, not spiritual, not intellectual. Today, the problem with most Muslims worldwide is that they lack intellectuality when it comes to their religion. Emotional about their madhab, about their school of thought. Emotional, not intellectual, not intellectual. So one main reason is jahl, misunderstanding. I was listening on YouTube to one of the influential speakers and preachers here in America. He's doing his PhD in Princeton. You go and check that. You go, I don't mention his name. You go and check that. One of the Salafis who studied in Saudi Arabia, completely brainwashed, completely anti-Shia and anti-Ahlul Bayt. And I was listening to him. Imagine he's doing PhD in one of the most prestigious universities in the world, Princeton. He would say in his lecture that Shias are all liars. They believe that lying is wajib, mandatory on them. Because their imams, Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq, they teach them to lie, not to speak the truth. He says in this YouTube clip, he says all Shia fornicate, they believe in zina and they practice zina. Someone who's studying here in America. Shame on Princeton. Shame on Princeton if they accept such a person who lacks the basic knowledge about Islam and Shi'ism and Ahlul Bayt. It's all about bigotry, ta'assub. And I'll speak about ta'assub next week, inshallah. So many of them, they lack the understanding. They don't give themselves the chance to open a book. Let me read a book first before I judge. Let me read a book and see what is going on. They don't. They put a psychological barrier between them and between ilm, between knowledge, between openness, psychological barrier. Such a nation, I am telling you, and I'm a Muslim, is not going to succeed. Such followers, narrow-minded followers who live in ignorance and jahl, who do not respect their Quran, their book where it says, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Ya Muhammad, Ya Rasulullah, اقرأ, read, investigate. Use your brain, use your reason, use your mind. They don't follow him. They don't follow him. And this is one of the major tragedies in today's Islam, contemporary Islam. And I would follow up on this subject, inshallah, in the upcoming weeks.